Afternoon to you. It's lovely to see you on this very bright, sunny September day. Hopefully, we're going to have a nice long summer that will take us through to the end of August. I'm hoping. I don't know. Are you in Ireland at the moment, Ginger? Is it nice over there?
No, it's not nice.
Oh, sorry.
We're having the typical Irish summer, and I'm headed to Malta, I think. No, I don't know. We have to go somewhere warm. So no, it's been raining for days again.
Oh,
anyway, but the thatch is done.
Well, thank you so much for joining us, and it's fabulous to welcome Lord Maurice Fermoy, with whom you are all very familiar now, and he is going to take us, I mean, I'm really excited about this, he's going to take us on the most personal tour of Sandringham, which is, well, reportedly one of Her Majesty's favourite estates up in Norfolk, and obviously where the royal family spend Christmas every year. So I'm going to share the screen and let there we go. Well, this is as privileged access as you can get from what you're about to see. So, Maurice, thank you for joining us again, and over to you. And I'm ready to press the button when need be.
Fantastic, Sam. Thanks very much indeed, and I apologise for some of you who've heard my voice before and the enthusiasm that I put into it. But this is a particularly personal subject of mine, as you will find out, and that might have come as a bit of a surprise to Sam and Lisa as to my family connections to Sandringham, because they're quite close. Therefore, I've been there a lot of times. I know the country rather well. I know the background, and what I'm going to try and talk about is not only the house and the grounds, but also why it's there, why the royal family bought it, what it provides for them, how it fits into the English scene, and so on and so on. So I'm going to talk with proper enthusiasm in my voice, that it is not just an English country house stuck in Norfolk. It is the epitome of the houses of its age and what it provided for the British upper classes and the monarchy. Can I have the first slide, please? So here we are. I want to get you to go back 150 years, 160 years back to 1860. Queen Victoria is on the throne. And has been reigning for a number of years, and her children are growing up, and they are in the London palaces. They're in Kensington Palace on the left, and they're in Buckingham Palace on the right. And the main thing I want to point out is that these are palaces. These are not owned by the royal family. They are owned by the crown, the estate, the government, the people. They are not private houses. It's where work is done, receptions are done, medals are given, investitures are carried out, the business of government takes place. They're cold, they're big, they're drafty, the sanitation isn't that great, but they don't belong to the kings and queens and the princes and princesses who live in them. Yes, it's London, but it isn't anyone's home. They've got private apartments in each of them, but they're not home. And this takes us down a path. So can I have the next slide, please? Even down the road at Windsor, this terrific castle of which this wonderful aerial view you see. It's a castle. It's a palace. It's hardly a home. It again is full of flats and other houses that belong to other people, family retainers, members of the royal household. The royal family would have private apartments within there, but they're not that private, and private entertaining isn't really possible. Also, it's in Windsor. It's suburbia. There's the railway line that takes that's being built, that's going to take commuters into London. Yes, there's Windsor Great Park, but there's housing. There's the ordinary man just beyond the fence. Their friends don't live there. The people, the families of the kingdom don't live there. It's a castle that's been there for a very, very long time, and suburbia is starting to grow up around it. Can I have the next slide, please? And then, of course, there is Balmoral. Now, Balmoral had been bought by Prince Albert, Queen Victoria's husband, at the beginning of the 1850s, in 1852. That's up in Scotland. It is a private residence. It is owned by Queen Victoria and her husband. Doesn't belong to the Crown, doesn't belong to the government. It's as you and I would buy a house, except it's a bit bigger. They bought it off a Scottish landowner, built a castle. They love going up there. It's hundreds of miles away, 50,000 acres. Towards the end of her life, Queen Victoria is spending a lot of time there. And as such, it's her house. It's where she was meant to have had a particular friendship with her servant, John Brown, who was her Scottish servant up there. So much so that it was she was nicknamed Mrs. Brown, meant to, in polite society. A good film to watch, Mrs. Brown with Judi Dench, by the way, which covers that scandal. But it belongs to Queen Victoria. And her husband. It's nothing to do with the Prince of Wales and his set, which we're going to move on to now. Can I have the next slide, please? And just to reiterate where we're talking about. Obviously, London there, Scotland, go way north of Glasgow and you hit Balmoral. So far it's off the map. The railways are being built. There are no cars, no planes. It's a very, very long way away. And the area that we're going to talk about is to the east of the country, just to the right of the word England. You see Norwich, just north of Norwich, that area of land that goes from Norwich up to the sea, which we're going to focus on today. Can I have the next slide, please? Back to the Prince of Wales. Now, he is Prince of Wales up until his 60th birthday. So he spends his entire time, similar to the present Prince of Wales, waiting to be king. He's got a mother who's going to live a very, very long time. And he's, rather like Prince Charles at the moment, carving his own mark in the world. He's fashionable. He's got his own set. He's got his own friends, and they are rich, young, landed. He wants to entertain them. He's already getting into bad habits. He's entertaining actresses. He got married at the very young age of 21 to his wife, who was only 18. And from 21, for most of the rest of his life, he entertained mistresses and had affairs and carried on. Obviously, divorce wasn't even thought about in those days, and that would never be allowed. But he lived life to the full, and he's looking for somewhere to entertain. Can I have the next slide, please? And his eyes look around and say, where is easy, where is nearby, where is not too far away, and his eyes look on Norfolk. In the area that we're talking about, just north of Norwich. And the main point is there are some pretty strong landed neighbours as well. The house on the left-hand side is Holkham, which is owned by the Earls of Leicester, who still live there. Family name is Cook, spelled Coke, of course, C-O-K-E. We never pronounce words as they are spelt in this country. The Cooks made their money agriculture, vast acreage, Earls of Leicester, Holkham on the left. Building on the right, Houghton, neighbours of Sandringham and Holkham. And there is the Marquis of Cholmondeley with his wife, his family. And below the Leicester and Cholmondeley, there are a number of other landed estates with houses of decreasing size to the ones that you're seeing there. So he's looking around and he's going to an area where there are landed gentry. He knows the families. They know him. They will entertain him and his guests, and him with there, and that's why he settles on Norfolk. Can I have the next slide, please? And so our eyes turn to Sandringham. Nice aerial view from it here. And from Edward, Prince of Wales's point of view, it's a perfect country house. And by that means, if you look on the left-hand side of the house, you've got entertaining rooms, you've got the front of house, you've got the billiard rooms, the drawing rooms, the sitting rooms, the halls, the master bedrooms with suites of bedrooms, all for him and his guests. And on the right-hand side, the equally most important, the servants' wing, where the butler, the valets, the keepers, the underkeepers, the ladies' maids, the cooks, the scullery maids, they are all based there. They've got somewhere to live. They can work 14 hours a day. They don't have to go and travel in from elsewhere. There's accommodation for them to work as long as it takes to entertain the left-hand side of the house as we look at it now. Perfect country house design, and that's what Sandringham is, and that's what he made it, and that's what he's made it. It's big enough to entertain. Next slide, please. And this cuts to, I'm just going to cut in here to this talk on Sandringham, because basically my family were heavily involved in this and lived next door. When I mean next door, for a number of years. Next door to Sandringham is Sandringham Church, where you get the pictures of the royal family going off to Christmas Day service. Next door to Sandringham Church in the bottom left is a house called Park House. And Park House, again, bought with the estate, owned by the royal family, a decent sized house. My grandfather came from America in 1930. He was American. He'd been educated at St. Paul's in Connecticut and Harvard. And then he came over, fought in the First World War with the American Army, and then came over when he became Lord Fermoy to England, and coincidentally became great friends with King George VI. Perhaps because he was American and easygoing, and everyone just liked him. And the king, being an American, all his money was tied up in America, and he didn't have and he had a very good income, but he wasn't able to buy a house over here. So the king said, "Why don't you rent Park House in next door to Sandringham?" And my grandfather rented it from 1935 to 1951, and he became MP for the local area, Member of Parliament, sat in the House of Commons. My father was brought up there, and after my grandparents moved out, my father's sister, Frances Shankidd, moved there, and you would recognise her as the mother of Diana, Princess of Wales. So she and her husband moved into Park House after their parents, my grandparents, moved out. So it is somewhere I know rather well. Can I have the next slide, please? And in fact, if you go to the churchyard there, in the graveyard of Sandringham Church, the left-hand stone is that of my grandfather, who was also called Maurice, like me. He was the 4th Baron, I'm the 6th Baron, and his grave is in the graveyard on the left. And on the right, my father was buried there, and he died in 1984. And he is buried in Sandringham Churchyard, right next to the house. So it is a particular family. There are strong family connections between my family and that house. which is rather nice for me. So back to the main story. Could I have the next slide, please? So, as you know, how we entertain, we don't go on sort of trips to holiday camps and places like that. We go hunting, we go shooting, or we go fishing, and we do English country sports. Top right is me hunting, jumping a decent sized hedge a few years ago, and I was just saying to Sam, I was on a horse this morning, and I've had a shower. I managed to remove the smell of horse off my and scrubbed up. But I was out on a horse autumn hunting this morning, shooting. Nice shot of Prince William shooting there with a long lens, and the other great English country sport, fishing, which the Prince of Wales and his grandmother, Queen Elizabeth, Queen Mother, took terribly seriously. This is what we do, and we buy houses, and we bought this house where we are because it is within the Warwickshire Hunt, and we wanted to go hunting. Other people buy houses because they are next door to salmon rivers or trout rivers, or in Edward, Prince of Wales, son of Queen Victoria's case, he bought Sandringham for the shooting. Could I have the next slide, please? So I'm just going to focus on shooting briefly, because it is that Sandringham and shooting go hand in hand. Sandringham is a shooting estate. It's got 20,000 acres. There will be, you could do 8 days shooting without going over the same land again. The shoot, the shoot would have been set out. There would have been woods planted, covers planted, gun pegs positioned to produce the best shooting there possibly could be for its age. And Sandringham and the other Norfolk estates are known for their shooting. There's no fishing, there's no hunting. They are shooting estates, they're pheasant shooting estates. It's what we call blood sports. And it is what the royal family have done since the guns became modernized in the 1850s, that you could shoot pheasants in line with birds coming over, with beaters beating, with your friends shooting next to you, and that's how it gets done. And on the left, you've got King Edward, the Prince of Wales, with his friends who he's asked to come and shoot with him. And on the right, you go forward another 120 years, 130 years, and you've got Her Majesty the Queen, the Duke of Edinburgh, doing exactly the same with their friends at Sandringham. The same woods, the same beats, probably the same gun pegs. The guns may well be 50 years old, 100 years old, so some of them may not have changed, but this is what they do at Sandringham, and that's why it's there, and that's why it was bought for him by his parents, for him and his friends to entertain, and that's where it began. Can I have the next slide, please? I'm going to focus first of all on the house. I know we saw that aerial photograph of it, but we can talk about this in reasonable detail. You're going to have a servant's wing, and you're going to have the main part of the house, and it's going to be incredibly similar to those who've been to Highclere or watched Downton Abbey. You're going to have the butler's pantry, the scullery, the kitchens, the maids' quarters, the various grades of staff that we can talk about. The top of the tree is the housekeeper and the butler, and obviously the head cook and all of that, all the way down to the newcomers who are the ladies' maids, the night staff, the people who pluck the game, and the maids who get the bedrooms ready for the guests. I mentioned the green baize door. You've got these two doors that will separate the servants' wing from the main part of the house, and in the door the door is the green baize door. It's made of baize, so when it shuts, there is no sound uttered. And the servants come and go, and no one in the main part of the house is disturbed, because there is green baize on the door to prevent that from happening. And that's just one of 40 or 60 stories that we could talk about Sandringham and the English country house set, and the fact that the names are on the doors so that the staff know which person is in there that night. We can talk about impropriety and in the later stages bedroom hopping, not necessarily at Sandringham, but at other houses. Men and women got married at 1920, and that was a long marriage, and they couldn't divorce. And we can talk about what they got up to and to entertain themselves while staying married to their husbands and wives, and this happened in English country houses. Just another small anecdote about that. And there's the inside of Sandringham to talk about. There are the rooms, the paintings, the pictures, the history, the furnishings, everything that goes within the house to almost have items in there that you want your friends to see and comment on. Ivory, paintings, furniture, silver. Can I have the next slide, please? And as well as that, you've got the grounds of the house. You've got the classic English garden. You've got croquet lawns. There might be a lawn tennis court there somewhere. I rather like that picture on the right-hand side, because it just shows the church in relation to Sandringham and how close my grandparents lived at that time. You've got the various trees that are planted. Obviously, we talk about the garden there because the insight of the press with a high-powered lens has gone to such a degree that there have been huge amounts of trees planted there to stop them spying with their lenses. And we talk about that and the classic English garden design, what's suited for Norfolk, why it grows there, how many gardeners that they would have had there 100 years ago, and how many gardeners they would have had now, and all of that. And that's interesting and fun. Can I have the next slide, please? And then just sort of back to the interiors. I rather like these pictures because you've got the picture on the left from Sandringham that's 130 years ago, and you've got the same door on the right that's about 10 years ago, and it hasn't changed much apart from colour photography has been introduced. You've got paintings, and you've got swords, and you've got military activity, and the paintings might have changed, but it's still there to make an impression on your guests about how important your family are, without overstating it too much. Can I have the next slide, please? And we talk about Christmas at Sandringham because Her Majesty goes, she goes on a circuit of her houses. Buckingham Palace is the office that is used in March, April, May, June, July. Windsor Castle is her weekend cottage, and she will go down there for the weekends and leave as early as she possibly can in the summer, and then come back to the office at Buckingham Palace for the weeks. And then there is Balmoral, where she goes up for an extended summer break. And then there is Sandringham, and Sandringham is Christmas, and Christmas is at Sandringham because the pheasant shooting runs from October to March, and that is when Sandringham is at its busiest, and why it is why it is there in the first place. So Christmas is at Sandringham, and very often the Queen delivers her Christmas message from the drawing room there. As you know, she gives this Christmas message every year. It's not done live. It is pre-recorded, but she is known as One Take Windsor. She's known as One Take Windsor because once she starts talking, there is no reason to go back and do the message again. It certainly wouldn't be suggested to her, and she will do the Christmas message in one take. It's filled out and then it's sent round on Christmas Day at 3 o'clock, where we all sit in front of our televisions and watch her Christmas message. And that happens at Sandringham. And then on the right, you have the great photo shoot of the royal family going to church at Sandringham on Christmas Day. And that is up until recently been a what we call a 3-line whip. It's been a compulsory attendance. All the major royals are there. They walk from Sandringham, I think they walk from Sandringham, not very far, down to the church. It's a great photo shoot. This came from, I think, the year before last, when the Duke and Duchess of, Prince William and Meghan Prince Harry and Meghan were there. Obviously, they're not expected to be back for a number of years, which is a huge shame. But that was the ultimate photo shoot, and a Christmas church service that they all had to go to, and that happens at Sandringham in the church that we were talking about earlier. Can I have the next slide, please? And then we talk about a couple of quirks, a couple of strange things about Sandringham. The first one on the left is really amusing. Well, it amuses me. Is there used to be something called Sandringham time, and Sandringham time meant that all the clocks at Sandringham were set half an hour forward from the rest of the clocks in the country. So at Sandringham, instead of being 2 o'clock, it would be 2:30. Instead of 3 o'clock, it would be 3:30, and this was known as Sandringham time, and it was introduced by the Prince of Wales when he became king. Because he was king, he could probably do that, and it stayed from 1901 to 1936. And the reason Sandringham time was there is that it gave shooting people an extra half an hour to shoot birds compared to the rest of the country. Shoots normally start at 9 o'clock, and if your clock is half an hour fast, it means that you have an extra half an hour of daylight in the very short winter days. It gives you an extra half an hour of daylight to kill pheasants. And that is why they had Sandringham time, and that is why the Sandringham clocks were half an hour faster than the rest of the country, which is quite fun. And on the right, this is General Lord Kitchener, who was in charge of recruiting people during the First World War, which I've very passed on briefly to my grandfather. Was an American officer in France in the First World War. And in the First World War, you joined up as a group of individuals. So you would have factories that would all join up together. You would have estates that would join up together. And there was a Sandringham company. There was a company of Sandringham volunteers, E Company, 5th Battalion, the Norfolk Regiment, with the Sandringham volunteers, and they were the grooms and the keepers and the gamekeepers and the underkeepers and the valets who could be released from Sandringham during the First World War, and they formed a company of men, and they went out and they fought in the Turkish peninsula of Gallipoli, where British troops were landed in Turkey to try and keep Turkey out of the war. It didn't go very well. There were vast numbers of men killed, and unfortunately the Sandringham Company was almost wiped out. And it was something that the royal family could say, we are doing our bit. We are sending our men to fight in the First World War as well, and that was the Sandringham Company. Could I have the next slide, please? And then we talk about the future of Sandringham, and what is really interesting is that the Prince William and his family have taken on another house up there called Amner Hall, which, rather like Park House, where my grandparents were, was a owned by the royal family, and they have bought it and they have made that their country house. And around them are already the descendants of the Norfolk families that we were talking about earlier. So Tom Cook, who's the Earl of Leicester, who's a friend, he lives there now. Cholmondeley lives there. Van Cutsons live there. There is a network, that's probably what I'm looking for. There is a network of landed upper class people who live up in Norfolk, and Prince William and his family have decided to make that their base. And he doesn't shoot particularly, but he's part of society up there. They have their friends up there. They have young friends up there. And he's decided to make that his base, his country base, rather than any other house or area in the country. So basically the future of Sandringham looks rather good. It is more than likely that once the Queen passes, Sandringham it's not going to be sold, it will stay within the family. It's probably highly likely, now that he has a social life up there, that Prince William will move into it at some point. So the future looks rosy for this wonderful English country house that was bought to keep a playboy prince occupied and kept out of trouble and kept out of London over 100 years ago. Thank you very much.
Oh, Maurice, that was absolutely wonderful. Thank you. And it's so great hearing these stories about our royal family, because I think, like so many of us, I'm a royalist through and through, and it's just glorious to hear. And I'm assuming that picture of Prince William and Kate is them clapping for the NHS, as we did for golly, I think a couple of months in the after the pandemic came out, and every Thursday at 8 o'clock we'd go out and clap for the NHS, and they joined in too. So that's just wonderful. Thank you. So a visit up to Sandringham, I'm sure, as you can see, is an incredible experience, and even better with Maurice as your host, because obviously you're going to get, your clients will get the complete inside track. Now, getting up to Sandringham, it is a bit of a distance from London, so we'd certainly recommend either staying up there or, I mean, it's a quick ride on a helicopter from London up there. So either way, we will make it a wonderful visit for your clients. But it really is a very special place, and I think it's enough has been said. So thank you, Maurice. That was just wonderful. So just to say a huge thank you for joining us. On Friday, the Humphreys TV has taken a visit to Stratford upon Avon. Now, we did a tea and training session about Stratford a few weeks ago, and we had a fabulous visit there at the weekend. So I hope you enjoy our little tour around Stratford. And next week, same time, this time next week, we are looking at all of the fabulous places to eat and drink in Hampshire, and there are gin distilleries and stunning restaurants and so on. And just also, if you saw Humphreys TV 2 weeks ago when we took you around Crockers, which is the rather fabulous new restaurant in Henley, I have to be honest, I hadn't sampled the chef's table, dinner in the chef's table at that point. Well, I now have, and it doubles my recommendation for people to go to Crockers. It was a complete eating experience and utterly glorious. So almost competing with the Fat Duck and the Waterside. So we have yet another fabulous addition to the area, which is glorious. So please do join us next week. And I just want to say that Lisa, who has looked after us so well and sent out all of the invitations and so on. Thank you, Anna, that's a lovely message. She is moving on to pastures new, going on to, one might say, bigger and better things, possibly. So I just want to say a huge thank you from me. She's been an amazing colleague, and I wanted to give you the opportunity of saying goodbye as well. So thank you, Lisa. So thank you so much, everybody, and we look forward to seeing you next week. Thanks. Bye-bye.